Welcome to Flavour Text, the podcast where we examine the intersection between lore, story, and gameplay in Arkham Horror, the card game, scenario by scenario. I'm CrabbyTerror8, and as always, I'm joined by my notoriously sesquipedalian co-host, Kevling. How are you, mate?
My what?
Sesquipedalian.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean now. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say, "How dare you!" And, thank you for ChatGPT for that. Apparently, sesquipedalian means someone who is overly verbose and talkative.
Really, and that's me. I actually sit here and let you do all the talking.
Yeah, I'm the sesquipedalian one.
I usually just chip in with something that's completely wrong.
I've got a whole list of them thanks to ChatGPT, so it will be a delight for both of us. Our vocabulary will have expanded by huge amounts by the end of this season, I'm sure.
Excellent.
How have you been? How have you been, mate?
I'm good, thank you. Yes. What have I been up to lately? I have been playing quite a bit of Mythwind, which is a Kickstarter that came a couple of months ago. It's sort of a Stardew Valley type of open-ended village building game, which you can sort of drop in, drop out co-op on, and you play through a year, and every character plays completely differently. So unfortunately, the first time you play a character, the game does sort of grind to a halt while you're trying to work out what on earth you do. But once you all know what you're doing, you all take your actions simultaneously, and basically each person has their own job, and they're trying to do whatever it is they do to make money. Like the farmer is planting crops and watering them, and the innkeeper is trying to satisfy the guests at the inn, etc., etc. And then you use that money to invest in the town and build it up its resources, make new buildings, sort of like a sort of a settlers type thing. And it's really, really good. Yeah, we had our first 5-player game last night, and it went really well. Everyone seems to be enjoying it. Really enjoying it.
Very relaxing and
it is
low key,
and they've just gone to Kickstarter for the next expansion, and they've already got plans for 2 more characters next year as well. So it sounds like they've got big plans for this game. The next expansion is going to add characters in the town that you can befriend and build up your relationships with, and which leads us very nicely onto the fact that I've also just started my Hemlock Vale playthrough with some friends at our local game store, where we are walking around the town and building up our relationship with people in town. So I didn't plan that segue, but that worked really well.
It did, yeah.
Yes, so we did the Prelude, where you first land on the island and you go around and like I say, meet the residents, befriend some of them, learn a little bit more about the island, and then we went off and did our first actual scenario, and we chose I can't remember what the actual scenario was called, but it's the one where you were in Hemlock House, and without spoiling anything, let's just say it's not a welcoming place.
Well, with a name like that, you wouldn't kind of. I can't imagine staying at a hotel. Come and stay at Hemlock House. I'd be looking at what I was drinking and things like that.
Some really interesting new mechanics and new card types in that scenario. So look forward to that one, everybody. But like I say, I've only played the intro and the first scenario, but really enjoying it. It does feel like a return to form almost for Arkham, I think.
Yeah.
Having said that, I haven't played Scarlet Keys. I've only heard all the people being negative and moaning about how much reading you have to do, and it's still under my desk waiting to be played. I think that's one to tackle solo, maybe, so I can just read at my leisure rather than as a group.
Yeah, I would. I can heartily agree with that, because I'm one of the moaners. I've done plenty of moaning. Guilty as charged.
And video game wise, I got a copy of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth yesterday as a gift, so I started that
Oh,
last
okay.
night. And what else have I done recently? I'm replaying Control on the Xbox because
Oh, I love that game. Oh
I
my goodness, I love Control.
I only had the PS4 version, which didn't run
Right.
particularly well, and then I missed
Mm,
the PlayStation Plus PS5 version, so I only ended up with the PS4 version on the PS5 as well, which ran a bit
right.
better.
Mm,
But then it's just dropped on Game Pass on the Xbox,
mm,
so I'm playing it on
right.
the Xbox now, and I've
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
caught up this week to where I got to on the PS4. So I'm
Yeah.
now entering into new territories. But yes, I absolutely love the game. I'm not a huge
Yes.
fan of the combat, and so I've been tweaking the bits in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
difficulty settings to make it suitable for an old man like me, who's got no reaction times and
I
is
know what you
enjoying the
mean.
story rather than the action.
Yes.
But yeah, really enjoying that as well. I feel
Oh,
like
I
I've
love
just
the
been.
old house. It's it's
Oh,
it's
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 absolutely
oh, so
incredible setting.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good.
And I think I read there was something in the news recently that the developer has actually got the rights for Control back off the publisher, apparently, so they can carry on developing the universe. So
Oh,
that's
that would
good.
be well. Apparently, Alan Wake and that are connected in some
They
way.
are, yes. Yeah, my
I'm not
youngest has
sure
played
exactly how.
both of the Alan Wakes now, and there are references in
Mm,
Alan Wake 2 to
mm,
the FBC and Federal Bureau Control.
yeah.
And
Oh,
there's,
I would. I mean, I'd love them to do a TV series
yes,
with the old house.
and
It's
just
such a it's
the
such a
visual
great.
design, never mind the game
Yes.
itself, everything is just stunning. The art design, I
Yeah.
absolutely love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. 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 Wow. I know it's a bit of a digression, but there was this sci-fi TV series maybe 20 years ago now, and it was called The Room, I think, something like that. And it was about, in the 1950s when they let off the atomic bombs, there was
Mm.
like a motel like that they kind of wanted to
Oh,
see what
yes.
happened to the building. Well, apparently one of the motel rooms stayed intact, and because of the explosive effects of all the atoms and quantums, everything in the room was imbued with weird quantum effects. And
Mm.
some are really trivial, like the pen from the room, I don't know, does, turns your shoe upside down. And other things are incredibly powerful, like, I don't know, the vase, if you pick it up, instantly kills you. And all the kind of the paraphernalia, everything in that room, from the bedspread through to the pen through the ashtray, has this whole underground black market in selling these items. And some items people still don't know what they do. They just know there's something weird about
That
them
actually
and they're
sounds
still
like
trying to work it
Control.
out.
With the objects of
Yes, right.
power, and then you find
Yeah,
yourself in that
exactly.
motel when you're talking to the board.
Exactly.
Yes,
Yeah, and they only made one series of it. It was just,
that sounds
fantastic.
interesting.
And
I'll
I
have to
was
look
like,
that up.
yeah, it sounds very similar to similar kind of ideas,
Mm.
of sort of weird science and things. So there you go. Yeah,
What about
well,
you?
yeah,
What have you been
Control.
up to?
Well, what have I been doing? I'm 140 hours into Baldur's Gate, Kevling. Oh boy, I think I'm in the third act. I think I'm in the third act now.
Yeah,
So I'm actually at I was thinking, when am I going to get
yeah.
to
I think that
Baldur's
is the
Gate? When?
third act when you get to Baldur's
Yeah,
Gate
so
itself.
I'm
Yeah,
there, but like there's so much to do and
yeah.
so many things, and my kids are horrified because I've had romantic relationships with weird beings, the tentacle person and the
Oh,
whatever.
really? Oh, you went with the
I
emperor,
went
did you?
there.
Yeah. Okay.
So they're horrified. I was delighted, but they were horrified. So yeah, I'm enjoying it, but Jesus, it's going on and on and on. So anyway, we'll see
It is
we'll
good
see
though,
where it
isn't it?
goes. It's great. It is great.
Just
Now I'm used to it. It's great.
and just seeing how all the sort of decisions you make and characters you meet, how it all fits together and it
Yeah.
all impacts on the
Yes.
later bits of the
Yes.
story. It's
Yeah.
incredible bit of
Yeah. Yeah.
design.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So really, I'm really enjoying that. Like you, I've started Hemlock Vale, did the Prelude, and then did a different scenario to you, and actually different. We were talking off air about the people we've gotten to know. I've gotten to know very different people to you, so it's really nice the way they've kind of taken the sandbox idea, but kind of made it less kind of so open ended that it's a bit more focused. So yeah, no, so end of I think we've done the first day night, so I think we're on the second day or something.
Right, yeah, we've just done the first day. We've not done a night scenario yet.
Yeah.
I love the sort of modular structure as well, as you have the different encounter sets depending on which day and whether it's day or night.
Yes.
So I suppose they can build in elements of the story progressing depending on when during the 3 days you visit each location. It's very, very clever.
Exactly. Yeah. And they've really done a good job within the sort of confines of the game in terms of bringing the characters to life in a meaningful way, and how, if you pursue, like an RPG, I guess, if you pursue more questions with some, then you sort of have a deeper relationship with them than others, and that kind of thing. So that's kind of quite a nice mechanic, that they've been doing there. So yeah, I'm enjoying that a lot. And apart from that, I've been playing Elder Sign. I'm doing my table of just churning through. I'm still in the first expansion, churning through every big bad.
You really are your own worst enemy at these games. Creating work for yourself. Just enjoy the game.
Oh boy. I don't know. I think without the scoring that thing, I wouldn't have the impetus to play them all. So I suppose it keeps me doing that. So yeah. So there we go. Yeah, lots happening. Yeah. So I think we were both sufficiently sesquipedalian there, Kevling.
We were, yes.
So here we are. We're at the very beginning of the circle undone. We're here at last. Yay!
Everybody's favourite.
So I was going to say, where were we up to last time? But there is no last time, of course. No. The only thing, of course, is that there's if anybody's listening to this who hasn't seen or heard, indeed, the background lore, this campaign's very much anchored to Dreams of the Witch House by H.P. Lovecraft. So it's definitely worthwhile either reading the story or sort of, watching the brief video on the background before starting, because I think it just gives it some good context to kick things off with. So yeah.
And also, I don't know if you're a new listener or if you picked it up from the way we've been talking about it, we always play through the scenario before we record. So a couple of weeks ago we played through this prologue, but for the first time we've recorded that session and we're going to have a go at uploading that either. So if that's something that you'd like to continue to see, we will continue to do it. But we'll be playing it anyway, so it's not much extra work just to record it while we're playing and pop it on.
No, plus you can see the splendour of our gameplay.
Oh, yes.
How good we are. What excellent players we are. Top tier.
You just have to look for the opportune moment in the video where we both go, this seems to be going really well. And then it all just goes straight down the toilet from that point onwards, yeah. Almost without fail every single time. We seem to be doing better than I was expecting.
Yes. Famous last words.
Chaos Bag says no.
Should we go through read through the background and whatnot here, Kevling?
Yeah, sure. Prologue Scenario 0, Disappearance at the Twilight Estate. Sunday, November 22nd, 1925, Arkham, Massachusetts. Though All Hallows Eve is nearly a month past, a grim melancholy lingers throughout the town. Each morning a thick fog permeates the streets. Nights are beginning to grow longer, and if you ask around town, you'll hear people swear that it's getting darker too. But despite the gloomy mood, progress continues in the sleepy town of Arkham. The election of Nathaniel Rhodes to the United States Senate has upstanding members of the community feeling optimistic about the town's future, and tonight at his well-appointed estate in French Hill, a man named Joseph Meiger hosts the Silver Twilight Lodge's Charity Gala, an annual members-only event. that will turn deadly for several attendees.
Wow. Hint.
Yes. So then at this point, so this is a first for Arkham, is we each choose one of the neutral prologue investigators. So we have Gabriella Mizra, Jerome Davids, Penny White, and Valentino Rivas. And so we play through those characters' stories, make choices that determine their fate, but it will not have an impact on our main investigator deck when we come to play that, but it will influence the story.
So, should we go through them now, do you think? Do you think that's a...
Yeah, okay, shall we look at them all? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to take one?
Yeah, why don't I take, well, the one I chose, actually. I'll take that one, which is Valentino Rivas, wealthy philanthropist. So Valentino here has 1 willpower, 3 intellect, 2 combat, and 4 agility. So pretty good at evading things. A Silver Twilight Socialite, has a fast action during a skill test you're performing. Spend 2 resources and reduce the difficulty of this test by 1. So you can sort of spend your way out of things. Bit like Preston sort of spends his way out of things. Elder Sign effect, +1, gain 2 resources, 5 strength, 7 mental strength. And if you flip Valentino over, you begin playing the billiard room, and we'll cover that in a moment. Search for gathered cards for 1 copy of Shadowhound and 1 copy of Terror in the Night. Spawn the Shadowhound, engage with you, and put Terror in the Night into play next to the agenda deck. You begin with 10 resources, so he's rich, so he's got lots of money. You start with Well Connected on the table. From memory, Well Connected lets you spend money to pass tests, I think.
I think so, yes.
And you start with your opening hand with a Derringer. So he's very much a rogue. So we've got Derringer, Opportunist, Chill Gamble, 2 copies of Money Talks, and 2 copies of Cunning. So he's got kind of, he's very much a rogue with money. Tino is a wealthy philanthropist and one of tonight's most esteemed guests, the recipient of a fortuitous windfall. Valentino lives a life of luxury and recreation. Despite his wealth, he remains connected to his community, and he takes great joy in giving large sums of money to good causes. So that's him. Yep.
I think it's worth mentioning as well, we'll probably touch on it as we get in the go through the document. This description of cards is basically, that is all you get. So you have, it's almost as though you're picking up a game in mid-flow. You're picking up these prologue investigators where they currently are in the party, in the gala, and taking it from there rather than playing from scratch with the deck as such.
Yes, that's right. You don't have a fully formed deck. You just, like you say, it's like you're sort of coming into them as they are.
Yeah.
Like you say, mid-flow. Yep.
Yeah. So I'll pick up Gabriella Mizra, private security. She is 3 willpower, 2 intellect, 4 combat, 1 evade. She's got a trait of a veteran. She has a reaction ability. After an enemy attacks you, even if that attack was cancelled, discover a clue at your location, limit once per round, and her Elder Sign effect is +1 and heal a damage and a horror. And she has 8 health but only 4 sanity. As her setup, she starts in the Victorian halls. There is 1 damage in play already on the Spectral Watcher, so I'm guessing she's already taken a pop at him. Search the gathered cards for a Fate of All Fools, put that into play in the threat area, and you only start with 1 resource instead of 5, so almost the opposite of Valentino. She starts with a 45 automatic with only 2 ammo left and physical training out, and her opening hand is First Aid, Guard Dog, Evidence, Dodge, Extra Ammunition, and 2 copies of Delay the Inevitable. So I think they're all core cards apart from that last one.
All Guardian cards too, right?
Yes, she's a Guardian, isn't she? Even though she's neutral, basically.
Yeah.
And her flavour text is: a former member of the Haganah, Gabriella Mizra now works private security for wealthy homeowners. Joseph Meiger, a man who takes his confidentiality quite seriously, has retained Gabriella to make sure there are no problems during tonight's event. But even she is not prepared for what is to come.
What is Haganah?
I was thinking the same thing as I read that.
Ah, it's a Zionist paramilitary organization that operated in the British Mandate for Palestine in 1920. So there you go.
Okay.
So that's Gavriela. And then there's Penny White, 4 willpower, 1 intellect, 3 combat, 2 agility. She's Joseph's housekeeper. Reaction trigger: after you succeeded a skill test during a revelation effect, discover a clue. And she's got 4 willpower, so she'd be pretty good at sort of up against the mythos. Elder Sign effect +1. If this is a skill test during a revelation effect, you may take an additional action during your next turn. 7 physical, 5 mental strength. You begin play at the balcony. Search the gathered cards for 1 copy of Wraith and 1 copy of Whispers in the Dark. Spawn Wraith engage with you and put Whispers in the Dark into play next to the agenda deck. You begin with 2 resources instead of 5. You have Dig Deep, Knife, Flashlight, and 2 supply tokens remaining. You get Stray Cat, Lucky, Knife, Flashlight, 2 copies of Acts of Desperation, 2 copies of Able Bodied, so clearly a survivor. Penny White is the Miger's estate head housekeeper. She's been working in the Miger estate for several years. Though she has only spoken to Joseph a few times, his overly fastidious nature has kept her quite busy. Tonight she is tasked with keeping the manor spotless, the food hot, and the hooch flowing.
And then last of all is Jerome Davids, Joseph's secretary. And his stats are 2, 4, 1, and 3. And interesting, when you look across the 4 investigators, they are all 1, 2, 3, 4 across the 4 stats. And if you were playing a 4-player game, you have always got a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4 in each stat. They're all evenly spread across the 4.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. He's assistant, and Andy is Silver Twilight. His reaction is: when an investigator at your location draws a treachery from the encounter deck, discard cards from your hand with a total of at least 2 book tokens and cancel that card's revelation effect once per round. And his Elder Sign effect, like everyone else, seems to be his +1, but he also discovers a clue at his location. He has 4 health and 8 sanity. He's set up, unsurprisingly, being the secretary. He starts playing the office, and he has Nethermist and Obscuring Fog. So Nethermist is spawned in the office, and Obscuring Fog is attached to the office, and he only starts with 3 resources. He has nothing in play, and his opening hand is Hyper Awareness, Mind Over Matter, Working a Hunch, Barricade, Deduction, Magnifying Glass, and then he all from the core set. And then he has Fingerprint Kit, Connect the Dots, and 2 copies of Curiosity. Interestingly, he's Magnifying Glass level 1, so he actually has an upgrade. So Jerome is Joseph Miger's personal assistant and secretary. He's a close friend of Joseph and is also an upstanding member of the Silver Twilight Lodge. He helps keep the Miger estate's vast finances in order and manages Joseph's time, which has become increasingly precious as of late. So they are our prologue investigators.
Yeah, it's interesting they didn't have a mystic. They just had a seeker, a survivor, a rogue, and a guardian to start with.
Yeah. I suppose maybe a mystic would have more insight into what's going on, perhaps.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, interesting. So yeah, you basically choose one. Doesn't really matter which one you choose, I don't think. Well, I suppose the story might be slightly different depending on who you choose, but
yeah, you all start in different locations with different enemies or treachery cards engaged with you, so there's a slight different circumstance for each one to deal with.
Yeah, and if there are fewer than three or fewer players, any one that's not chosen is just just logged as a missing person, essentially. So it's not like they don't exist in the game world. It's just that they are missing, basically. Yep. Okay. Great.
Do you want to pick up the intro then on the...
Oh, yeah. So I'll, wow, it's quite long there. So this is a bit of a wall of text now before the start, isn't it? We've got all the intro and then for each of the characters. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, Joseph Marger announces, raising a glass of champagne to a toast. The hush descends on the room until only the crackle of the fireplace and whispers of gossip can be heard. Allow me to welcome you all into my home for this year's charity gala. We have some very upstanding citizens here tonight, and I thank all of you for your hard work and generosity. Cheers and murmurs of agreement filled the room. Many of the guests raised their glasses to Valentino, one of the most esteemed members of the lodge this year, who sits at the guest of honour table, which is nearest to the fireplace. Joseph's assistant Jerome blends into the wall behind Joseph, discreetly checking his pocket watch. In another corner of the room, the head housekeeper Penny walks from table to table, filling empty glasses and collecting dirty salad plates. Each of you has done great deeds in the name of the Silver Twilight Lodge and our historic city, Joseph continues. Next year, we will continue to shoulder this burden and do what must be done for the sake of progress. Jerome steps forward, quietly interrupting Joseph's speech with the unassuming confidence that comes from years of trusted service. He taps Joseph lightly on his shoulder and shows him the time. I'm afraid I'm already out of time. Thank you all very much for attending. Joseph concludes, bowing. Polite applause rises from the audience, and Joseph walks briskly toward the parlour, followed by closely his assistant. Two servants collect coats as latecomers trickle into the manor, and Gavriella, Joseph's head of security, watches over the entrance with hard eyes and a clenched jaw. Has Mr. Sanford arrived? Joseph asks curtly, tapping his polished leather shoe on the floor. I'm afraid not, Jerome replies, flipping through the last pages of the estate's guest book. But he should be here any minute now, Mr. Marger. Good. I want there to be no problems whatsoever when he arrives. Am I understood? Joseph calls out to Gavriella. Make sure he's well protected. Gavriella nods, patting the handle of a 45 in her shoulder holster. Joseph turns his attention back to his assistant and have Penny make sure the main course is kept good and hot while we wait for Mr. Sanford's arrival. Not a single slice is to be served without his presence. Not even Mr. Rivas, sir? Jerome asks, glancing at Joseph over the rim of his thick glasses. Joseph pauses for a moment, considering. Pour Mr. Rivas another glass of champagne, and I'm sure he'll not complain. Also, I'm still waiting on those accounts I asked you about earlier today. Don't forget, Joseph says, clapping his assistant on the shoulder before walking back into the banquet hall. Jerome nods obediently and heads upstairs. Soon after, the dark mist would appear, and nothing would be the same.
Okay, so I'll pick up Gavriella's intro. You stand guard as instructed, waiting for Mr. Sanford to appear. By now, the remaining guests have filed into the banquet hall, and you can hear the sounds of merriment and drinking coming from beyond the wooden door behind you. You pay them no mind, remaining vigilant. Years of fighting and discipline have taught you to be ready for anything, even at a harmless banquet like this. Just as you begin to ponder whether your talents are being wasted under Mr. Marger's employ, a dark mist invades the parlour through the front door and the window frames, flooding the room. At first you believe it only to be the evening fog seeping through the manor's entryway, until you begin to notice that everything the mist touches seems to have decayed as though aged hundreds of years. You step back cautiously, keeping a hand on the grip of your weapon just in case. Never in all your years have you seen something like this. An unnatural chill spreads throughout the room and shivers run up your spine. As the ashen mist finishes pouring in, it coalesces into a singular form, a humanoid figure wrapped in shadows. It raises its hand and points at you with a charred, blackened finger. You unholster your firearm and point it at the creature, allowing your training to take cover. Don't come any closer, you shout. The thing watching you from the entrance is unfazed. Its ethereal form begins to glide towards you, dark mist crawling over the carpet in its wake. I warned you, you growl, and a thunderous shot echoes through the parlour as you squeeze the trigger. The bullet rips a hole in the figure's head like a rush of air billowing through a column of smoke. The mist stitches itself together, and the thing continues to drift your way, reaching out menacingly. Nothing could have prepared you for combat with such an unnatural enemy. Faced with no other option, you turn and flee up the staircase nearby, pausing to squeeze off several more shots at the top. The bullets that make their target simply pass harmlessly through the ghostly figure, striking the door behind it. A few stray shots shatter a column of the staircase's wooden balustrade. And that explains why she's not starting with a full ammo in her gun.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. So, not So it's really weird, isn't it? Because everything seems so very normal, and then suddenly it's not normal. It's like, what's happened? So then we have Jerome, who's the secretary. You carefully flip through the pages of Mr. Miger's ledger, looking for the accounts he inquired about. You have served Mr. Miger faithfully for almost a decade, and he trusts you with sensitive information like this, a point of pride for you. While you are often curious about your employer's business, you've never pried into his personal matters. Not until tonight, anyway. You adjust your glasses and lean forward as you turn to the page regarding Mr. Miger's request. Some of the names on the list you recognise: Revis, Gensler, Fairmont, Rhodes, Wick. Many are names you've never heard of before, let alone seen affiliated with Mr. Miger's work. Lindquist, Konstantinov, Magro, Atkinson, Lamar. Just how deep do Mr. Miger's connections go? Strange as it may seem, it is the list of names on the page afterwards that raises your hackles. While it was clear that the names on the previous page are associates of Mr. Miger's, or at least prominent members of the lodge, you can only assume that this next series of names is of people your employer is targeting. For what? You cannot say. You stand next to Joseph's desk and record the list in your pocket journal carefully, making sure to keep the names in the exact order they appear in Mr. Miger's ledger. You hope that your suspicion is nothing more than the absurd imagination of an overworked secretary. Still, something about all of this has you concerned, that and the sudden draught of frigid air that somehow wafted into the room. Your gaze naturally drifts to the window, at which point you scream out in shock and lose your balance, stumbling backwards into Mr. Miger's desk. Pressed up against the office window is a host of screaming faces emerging from the mist, or perhaps composed of it. Their ghostly hands press against the glass and their eyes hollow and empty. Your reading glasses clatter to the ground and shatter under your heel as you scramble to the other side of the office. You don't realise that you dropped your pocket journal in the chaos until it's too late. Oh, jeez. Nasty. So we've got watchers and nasty people, and we've got ghosts at the window.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. So we'll do Penny's intro now.
Yep.
So just from my own memory, Penny is Joseph's housekeeper.
Yep.
Yes. You sigh as the cool New England air embraces you. It has been a very stressful night, stressful enough that you've decided to sneak away from the clamour to grab a quick smoke before heading back to work. You rest your arms along the metal railing of the balcony, your fingers trembling as they hold your cigarette. The dreary gambrel rooftops and Victorian manors of French Hill span the view below you, the unlit windows hiding countless secrets. You can't remember a night in which your employer was as concerned with every little detail as he is tonight. He's normally so calm, so collected. There's something special about tonight that has him on edge. Is it Mr. Sanford? A shudder crawls through you. For some reason, something about that man gives you the creeps. But Joseph has interacted with Mr. Sanford many times before, so that cannot be the reason. What could it be that has Mr. Miger so worried? You are torn from your thoughts by the gathering of grey clouds overhead, swiftly blotting out the night sky. As the clouds grow ever closer, you begin to see shapes emerging from the vapour. You squint and lean over the railing for a better view. That is when you notice the true forms of the shapes in the mist, their screaming faces, their clawing hands, all writhing in torment and coming straight for you. You cry out in terror and back up against the wall as the mist envelops the building. A spectral shape emerges from the haze beyond the railing, dressed in blood-stained rags. It begs for rest in a croaking, gasping voice. Your only hope for escape is to retreat back into the manor and call for help.
Yes. And then Valentino is, are you going to break, or are you going to sit there admiring the cue ball all night? You ask with a mocking smile. Your opponent sets the ivory ball back on the table with a sigh. I can't help myself around ivory. You know that, Tino, Adam replies. You rarely see Adam Gensler, except during lodge functions, but you prefer his company to that of the stuffy business types who make up most of the lodge these days. He makes his shot, the sudden clattering interrupting the din of conversation. Your shot, Tino, and try to avoid hitting the 9-ball first. You're always so over-eager. Adam chuckles as he moves to the other side of the table, making way for you. That That was one time, my friend, one time. You roll your eyes. Truth be told, you've enjoyed coming to these events for the opportunity to give back to the community, not to hobnob with Arkham's gentry, but hobnobbing has its perks. You lean over the table and clear your mind as you line up your shot. The room falls silent as you block out the clamour and the music, focusing all of your attention on the one ball in the corner pocket. You hold your breath and strike the cue ball. It clacks as it hits its target, and the one ball drops effortlessly into the corner pocket. There, you see? It's only then that you realise the silence around you is not just in your mind. All of the light and warmth has been sucked out of the room. Adam is gone, along with everyone else who was present just moments before you took your shot. Hello, you call out. A dark mist coils around your ankles as you walk around the billiards table. Is this a practical joke of some kind? It's in awfully poor taste, you remark. The only response is the deep growl that emerges from underneath the table. Morbid curiosity compels you to look underneath it, at which point a dark hound pounces onto your chest, savagely clawing at your torso. You react instinctively, pushing it off with your body as hard as you can. It lands on the billiard table, causing it to collapse under the creature's weight. You slowly back up as the creature rises to its feet once again and jumps off the broken table, its hollow eyes gazing into your soul. So there we go.
Yeah, so then we go through the rest of the setup. It's we've got a whole bunch of encounter sets that we pull from. The only specific instruction is that when we're gathering the bits from the At Death's Doorstep encounter set, we only pick the 7 spectral locations, not the ordinary ones or anything else.
That's right.
And then they go into play in sort of like a cross shape. We each follow our instructions on the back of our investigator card, saying where we start and what with. And then everything else gets shuffled into the encounter deck. But then a sign of how the scenario is going to play out, we have this heading at the end called No Way Out. There is no positive resolution for this scenario. Investigators should strive to last as long as they can and gather as many clues as they can before their inevitable demise. Note that while cards can still be added to the victory display during this scenario, experience and victory points will not be gathered. And since these investigators do not have decks, we ignore any instructions that interact with decks or draw cards, and we don't have discard piles, so once you've played a card, it's gone, and then it just finishes with good luck. You'll need it.
Yeah. And, I mean, this intro and this background exactly aligns with Dreams in the Witch House in the sense that we're in Arkham. So gone are the past to Carcosa, gone are the, Forgotten Age, Into the Jungle. We're very much in Arkham. They're talking about we're in French Hill. It's about, it's very much more localized. It's not like we're off on some grand adventure across the world or something like that. It's much more localized, and it's very much talking to this sort of clearly whatever's happened. It's something like the spectral, the living and the dead, kind of the veil between the two has been pierced somehow, which is exactly what sort of happens in the story as well. So it's clearly it's very much taking inspiration from that story, and right from the get-go here in this prologue.
Shall we take a look at the locations that will be? Oh no, shall we look at the act and the agenda? That's probably a good. Place to start,
I mean, there's only one of each, so it's sort of they're there, but they're sort of only a little bit there, if you like. Yeah. So the agenda 1A just says Judgment 20, which is clearly a tarot. So there's a sort of in this campaign, there's the tarot cards and the idea of sort of fate and things being set out as sort of a theme of this particular campaign, if you like. And this is here. So Judgment, there is no escaping fate. Hear the call and be reborn is the sort of the statement. And it says force after doom is placed on any card. Each investigator must either take a damage or 1 horror, indeed 2 damage or 2 horror if there is 5 or more doom in play. So every time a doom goes down, you're taking damage or horror. So like they said, you're not going to last forever. You've got to get as much done as you can in the time that said. It says forced when an investigator is defeated. That investigator must advance this agenda. Do not remove any doom from the agenda when it advances. So there we go. So that's the agenda. So interestingly, it's just for that investigator. When that investigator is defeated, that investigator must advance this agenda. Yep.
Okay, and then the act, again, similarly only one act, Act 1A, The Disappearance. Something terrible has invaded the home of Joseph Miger. In the moments that follow, you scramble to survive. And then forced, when an investigator is eliminated, place each of that investigated clues on this act instead of on their location. And as the objective, discover as many clues as you can before your inevitable demise.
Yes.
They like saying that, don't they?
Yes. So basically, it's just survive as long as you can, get as many clues as you can, basically. Yeah. Yes.
Cool. So shall we have a look at the locations, the spectral locations that we've got in play?
Absolutely. Yeah. Shall I kick off with the entry hall? Seems like an appropriate place to start. In fact, this is not a new picture. This is the classic picture that's been used all the way back in Dunwich as well. It's sort of a corridor with a door partly open. This is the revealed side. The entry hall is blocked by a wall of spectral mist. You cannot enter the entry hall. Silver twilight enemies cannot spawn in the entry hall. A wall of dark mist blocks your escape, decaying everything it touches. Ghostly hands grasp at you from the mist, desperately trying to pull you in. You suspect that if you tried to cross through the mist, you wouldn't emerge alive.
And I'll start from the left then, the billiards room. So I think that's where Valentino was, wasn't it?
That's right. He was in the billiards room.
So the unrevealed side. From outside this room, you can hear the creaking of old wood and the patter of soft footsteps along the ground. And on the revealed side, and you can see the smashed up billiards table. Lots of almost like tendrils of wispy mist rising up out of it. So this is a spectral location. 3 shroud, 1 clue per investigator, and we've not talked about haunted, have we? So there is this is a new mechanic that was introduced in the Circle Undone. So haunted, if I remember right, is if you fail. Is it fail any skill test, or is it fail an investigation? I think it's investigation.
Investigation, yes.
Yeah. Then you have to trigger the haunted effect. So haunted, you must either discard an asset you control or take a damage.
Yep.
The flavour text is: the game room's warmth and laughter have been replaced with a sense of quiet dread. Tendrils of black mist slither from underneath the collapsed billiard table, twisting and swaying along the floor in a formless dance. Slightly better way of when I said it. It is a description of the picture.
It's very nice description, that one.
And it's a victory point,
yes.
But not that that matters on this scenario.
Now, I think the trophy room is connected to the billiards room. Is that right?
It is.
Yep. So flanking this door are 2 rotting deer heads mounted on the wall. They stare at you with hollow, dead eyes. Lovely. So the trophy room, oh boy, this is a pretty hideous picture of rotting animals on the wall. 2 shroud, 1 clue per investigator. Haunted, lose 2 resources. For each resource you cannot loot from this effect, take a horror. Rotting animal heads adorn this room's wood-panelled walls, once a display of power and sovereignty, now macabre displays of death and decay. You cannot help but feel their empty eyes drilling through you as you explore the room. There we go. That's the trophy room.
Okay, I'll take the Victorian Halls, which is in the centre of the map and connects all sort of 4 wings sort of thing.
Yep.
The warm rays that once illuminated these halls have faded into beams of cold grey moonlight that shine through floating motes of dust and wisps of dark mist.
Oh, so who's writing this stuff? It's fantastic.
And then the revealed side, it's 4 shroud, but there are no clues. It has a haunted effect of lose an action. A haunting stillness lingers through the frigid, dead halls. The many paintings that adorn the walls have faded and become unrecognisable, and the metal statuettes flanking the corridors have completely rusted over.
So it's a little bit like it reminds me a bit of the first scenario in Carcosa, where you wake up and everything's old, and feel like you've been there for forever.
How long have I been asleep?
Yes, it's that kind of feeling where everything's sort of dead and decayed, isn't it? Shall I do the office? The lone door atop the second floor staircase has rotted and decayed as though hundreds of years have passed. The once polished oak is now stained and warped. It could collapse at any moment. So it is a 4 shroud, 2 clue per investigator location. Picture is actually relatively unscathed in this one. Looks all right in there. Haunted, choose and discard a card from your hand. It's got a victory 2 because it's high shroud, so and there's a lot of clues on here. A thick, oppressive haze fills what was once an impressive office. Cracks fork up and down the wooden panelling of the walls, and the bookshelves surrounding Joseph's desk sag with the weight of rotten, decayed books.
Yeah, not really reflected in the picture, that description, is it? The shelves don't look sagging and decayed to me.
Looks fairly okay, actually.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move along to the master bedroom. The unmarked door is old and partially rotted, set in a quiet corner of the upstairs hallway. A thick, dark fog seeps beneath the door and wafts around your feet. 3 shroud, 1 clue per investigator, and as haunted is place 1 of your clues on the master bedroom. Tendrils of black mist have invaded every corner of this room, from the open balcony doorway causing furniture to decay and collapse. Every piece of wood and glass is shattered and warped. Nothing is untouched. Victory 1.
Yeah, and finally we have the balcony. A shattered glass door leads onto the balcony outside the estate's master bedroom. This is a 1 shroud, 1 clue per investigator. Location, haunted. Each of your cards with health takes 1 direct damage. Clouds of dark mist loom above French hills. Spectral shapes surround the balcony, moaning and writhing in torment. So yes, things are not good. Yes.
And so so we've got, like we said, we've got the introduction of haunted there, which is designed just to sort of accelerate your demise. Really, every time you fail at an investigation, there is a negative effect that you have to suffer in addition to the failed investigation itself. So you could be taking a damage or a horror, or losing an asset, or discarding a card, or etc., losing one of the clues that you just found.
I know. Yes.
And so on.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Just stymieing. And on top of all this, you're being harassed by the Spectral Watcher. You are its prey. It's a 3/5/3 haunted ancient one, spectral and elite. It's alert and a hunter. So it's flitting around after you, and it's alert, which means if you try and evade it and you fail, you take a damage and a horror, because it doesn't do... Yeah, that's what it does as damage. And it says, forced, when the spectral hunter is defeated, instead of discarding it, heal all damage from it, disengage it from all investigators, and exhaust it. It does not ready during the upkeep phase this round. There is no escaping fate. So there's no point trying to... Well, killing it just makes it evade for longer, basically.
Just slow it down.
Slow it down
for a turn, don't you?
Exactly. But to be honest, you're going to be taking a ton of damage from the agenda anyway. So it's because there are plenty of cards in the encounter deck which put doom onto things as well. So you can rack up the damage pretty fast.
So it's literally a case of just tearing around these rooms, gathering as many clues as we can before we die.
Exactly.
Effectively, isn't it?
That's exactly it.
And that's it.
Yeah, that's it basically. So at some stage, so the act doesn't strictly flip, only the agenda flips. So if the agenda... So if you demise, which you will, then you get, in the missing persons section of your campaign log next to your character's profile, make a record of the character's fate as followed. And you can, if you were defeated by the Spectral Watcher's attack, record that you were taken by the Watcher. Or if you were defeated by monster enemies attacked, you can put that you were claimed by spectres. If there was 7 or more doom in play when the agenda advanced and you were defeated by horror or damage dealt by the forced ability on agenda 1A, you disappeared into the mist. Or finally, if you're defeated by some other effect, then you were pulled into the spectral realm. So one of those four things will happen to you, inevitably.
Yes.
Yep.
And then for the act, which, as you say, it doesn't advance because there is no target for you to reach. And it's one of my favourite mechanisms in Arkham Horror, where they introduce some text that you were never supposed to read. Yes, if you flip the act in a sort of a I don't know how you describe it, sort of look like a handwritten, menacing script.
Yes.
Shadows twist in the ether's coil, the gate has led us all astray. Despair loathes a beating heart, dead or living we cannot say. Blackest throne in void of space, she who signed knows the way. It smells your soul, it knows your fate, its gleaming eyes holds us in sway. Record in your campaign log that you are being hunted. Flip back to Act 1A.
Oops.
Is anyone ever going to write in the campaign log, I am being hunted, after reading that? Oh, I'm going to pretend I never saw that. Ooh, that's got to be something bad.
Yeah, that's a bit Carcosery, isn't it? That sort of messing with you like
Yes.
that. That's good. Yes.
Yeah, I do like that.
Yes. So, and then the resolution, no resolution was reached because each investigator was defeated. Mr. Sanford, thank you so much for coming. I know you are a busy man. Your presence at tonight's meeting is very much appreciated. Joseph shakes Carl Sanford's hand firmly as he speaks. Sanford merely nods. I know we've only just arrived, but I have some private matters to discuss with you, if that's all right. Joseph continues, his narrow eyes shifting back and forth between the men flanking Mr. Sanford. Very well, the elderly man nods as his two enforcers who step aside to give him privacy. He cradles his hands behind his back, his stature impressive for his age. His discerning eyes fall on Joseph. What is the matter? Joseph leans closer. It's here, sir. It's here in this very house. There's a quiet pause between the two men, and then Carl Sanford smiles. And that's it.
Yes.
Yes.
So we don't earn any experience.
Nope.
And then the total number of clues that we found becomes the pieces of evidence that were left behind for a later scenario.
That's right. Yep. Exactly.
And then that's it. We assemble a real investigator to carry on with at that point, and we carry on.
That's right. So we're sort of left with, I mean, it's given us a kind of a feel for what this campaign is going to be like. We've been introduced to some characters, Joseph Meiger and Carl Sanford, who seems like a bit of a shady character. We get the impression that whatever's happened, we're going to revisit it at some stage. But that's it. I suppose it's giving you a bit of a taste for what's going to happen in the campaign.
Yeah. It is. It's effectively a playable introduction text, isn't it?
It is. That's what it is. And I mean, it shows. I think that because this is we've had Dunwich, we've had Carcosa, we've had the Forgotten Age. It feels like they're trying to do some different things in this new campaign, and this is a bit of a radical. This is something different. Shows what you can do with this game. It's quite flexible in the way that you sort of do things, and sort of echoes of this are have sort of popped up, I suppose, in the latest campaign, but a little bit different, but sort of a bit similar in some ways. But yes, instead of just a mound of text, so there's quite a lot of text, but it's a playable scenario, and I think it's a nice way of getting people sort of immersed into the story and sort of set up some expectations about what it's going to be like. It's going to be a bit different gameplay wise. They're trying some new things. The story's going to be different. No grand kind of treks across the globe or through the mines. More almost back to Dunwich in some ways, I think. So
yes, more sort of a condensed setting.
Yes.
After trotting off to Mexico in the Forgotten Age and the depths of the jungle, trotting around the world. No, this is an Arkham
Yeah,
story,
exactly. And it's interesting you say that because, this start is a bit like how a lot of horror movies start with a sort of a shocking beginning, which you don't, what's going on? People have died and horrible things have happened, and then most of the movie is then putting the pieces together, you know what I mean, about so that then you understand what happened at the very beginning, you know what I mean. It's that
Yes, it's almost like, it's like the start of Scream where
Yep.
Drew Barrymore gets killed before the opening credits, and you think, hang on a minute,
Yes.
she was supposed to be the star.
Exactly. Whereas Forgotten Age didn't start like that. Forgotten Age is like, let's go on a grand adventure. There's no sort of shocking beginning or anything like that, which is, so this is more that kind of, oh my goodness, what, it's raised more questions than it answers. Who are these people? Who's Carl Sanford? Who's this? Who's that? Why's this happened?
Yes.
What's going on? Oh, it's terrible, and we got no idea basically. So it's giving us kind of a whole lot of questions in that way. Actually, I wanted to mention Carl Sanford and the Twilight Lodge. I'd always assumed they were a Lovecraft thing, and they're not. H.P. Lovecraft never mentions the Silver Twilight Lodge. Doesn't exist in his books at all. It's actually Sandy Peterson from Chaosium who creates the Silver Twilight Lodge for the role-playing game in 1981, 1982, who came up with that. So
interesting.
Yeah. So I guess it's not copyrighted. I suppose they can use it. I suppose I'm not sure how that works, but yeah. So,
So gameplay wise, it's an interesting way of introducing the story first time you play it.
Yes.
But it's such a is restricted the right word? There's no variability in the setup other than which of the 4 prologue investigators you are playing as, which affects where you start and what you start with.
Exactly.
It will always play out the same way. There's no variability really in the setup other than the sequence the encounter cards come out of the deck. So from a replayability wise, it's very limited, isn't it? And
yes.
As we were talking before we started recording it, the community have come up with multiple ways of not having to play this ever again, because it's not. I think it's similar to what we've just been saying. It's a good design to get you into the story and get you familiar with it, but it's not something you're going to want to replay. So the community have found ways around that. So I think you mentioned there's a way of using the tarot cards from the Return to box, to decide who disappeared into the mist, how much evidence was left behind, all that sort of thing, which sounds a really interesting way of doing it, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that's a kind of a nice way of doing it. Arkham Cards has got the option there for you to do that if you want. But you can literally just roll dice, it's the other way of doing it. It's just sort of random thing, pull bits of paper out of a hat, whatever way that you want to do it. And I think that's right. I think, like you say, it's a bit too restrictive to it doesn't have enough variability to be sort of an interesting thing to replay over and over again. So I can understand that people would want to kind of just quickly do the random thing and sort of start the campaign proper in that way. Yeah, exactly. Having said that, though, it kind of is, that's okay if you know it really well, but I mean, I've literally only played it once before, I think 5 years ago. So, for me, it was it was a nice thing to replay and experience it. So,
yeah,
I think the other thing they could have done is maybe make it more of a sort of a gathering kind of thing to sort of help new players ease into the campaign, I suppose, that kind of idea.
I think the fact that it is designed to end in everybody's death I think that is what effectively limits it, isn't
Yes,
it?
it is.
So it's not as though, oh, how am I going to tackle this scenario? What tools can I use to survive? What tools can I use to meet my objective? There is no objective. It's predetermined that you will fail the scenario, and I think that is probably what restricts the replayability of it.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's kind of like on rails. It's a haunted house on, when you go to a haunted house and it's on rails or whatever,
Yes.
you know where the destination's going to get to. It's just, you just go along for the journey, really, in that way. So, I think what they've done is they've taken that idea and they've developed it a bit since, so that it's got more replay, an interesting replay value in that way. So yeah. But I think as a sort of a scene setter and a way to kind of ease into the campaign, it's fine. It certainly works, functions from that perspective.
I think it works well as an experiment in doing something different in how the game is structured and introduced as well.
Yes, exactly.
And it's just a shame that the replayability is not so great, and which is what puts people off it, really.
Yeah, and I get that. I mean, if you've played Circle Undone 3, 4, 5, 6 times, you don't want to play it again. Fair enough. You don't want to waste the time. I get it. So so it's nice that they've recognized that, because in the Return to, they've given you this lovely tarot option where you can draw a tarot and all that kind of thing, which is kind of quite nice. So it has some kind of flavor to it, rather than just drawing a random number out of 22 or whatever it is. I think there's 22 different options or something. So at least it's a bit nicer than that. So yeah. But I think if you've not played it before, obviously, but if you haven't played it for a few years, I think it's definitely worth playing through. And particularly if there's other people who haven't played through it, it would be a shame if you were in a multiplayer and one person hadn't played it and you went, oh no, let's just do the random. That would be a little bit that would be a bit unfortunate, I think.
Rob them of the experience.
Yeah, exactly. So because it's pretty well done from that perspective, and if you like story as well, you're going to prefer to play it as well. I think if you prefer atmosphere over mechanics, so to speak, I think that works well as well. But so there we go. So we're kicking off the Circle Undone. So so off next time we're off on is it the Witching Hour, I think?
The Witching Hour, yes, the first scenario proper, as you say. Yeah.
And we will we'll have a play of that, record ourselves dying in that one. And then we'll have a chat about that one. And I'm real looking forward to it, because I remember barely anything about the Circle Undone. So it's like playing it all again from the start, because I barely remember it at all. So I'm really enjoying it so far. So, yeah.
Yes. Excellent.
There we have it. So thank you very much for listening. I'm CrabbyTerror8.
And I'm Kevling. Bye.
Bye.
So once more, thank you for listening. We're on all the major podcast platforms, so please subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. If you have any feedback for us, you can email us on ftextpodcast@gmail.com or message us on Instagram and Threads at ftextpodcast. So on behalf of CrabbyTerror8 and myself, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye!